Okay, welcome to the second of the GCSE Maths free tuition lessons I'm doing on YouTube. So for this lesson we're going to go through coordinates and pictograms. So this is kind of the basis of all of the graph sketching and plotting and recognition that you'll be expected to do during your exam. And also with pictograms, it's just one of those data representation models that you have to be able to work with. Neither of this is particularly tricky yet, so it is for higher and foundation tier, so don't worry too much about that. But we're going to be starting with the kind of basics of coordinates, so basically reading the graph. So when we have a coordinate axis, like this, or like this grid over here, we call these Cartesian coordinates. Okay, and the reason why it's called Cartesian is because it's made by Descartes, but these just involved x and y values. Okay, so an xy pair will make this up. So a good way to check this out is if we have a look at every single point on this diagram here, it has an x value and a y value. Okay, and we can represent that using a set of coordinates. So the x value always refers to how far left and right you're going. So if I look at this point here that I put, if I find where it matches up on the x-axis, so if you were to look down which number it refers to, it would be a 1. The reason for that is if we go along, right, -4 is all of these values here, -3 is all of these values here, -2 is all of these values here, -1, and so on. The value of x that goes up to here is 1. So we'd start with the 1, and then if we look at the y value, because again we need a pair, because at the moment it can exist anywhere along that whole line, we'd go up to where it says on the y-axis. Y again tells you how far up or down you're going, and it tells it, in this case the point that I've chosen is going to be a 3. Okay, so just as a recollection, every point is made up of an x, y value. Okay, it's a pair of values. The x tells you how far left and right you are, the y value tells you how far up and down you are. Okay, so if we look at this point here, left to right, we're 1 across and we're 3 up. So, in the first question, it just so happens that we need to plot the point with coordinates 1, 3 and label it A. So we've just done that already. Okay, but again, if we were to look for 1, 3, we'd go 1 across. Okay, 1 is here. Then I need to go 3 up. So we're going across here, going up here, and it comes to this point, which I'm going to label A. Okay, so I'm assuming that's all okay with you guys. Now for part B, it says you need to write down the coordinates of the midpoint of BC. Okay, so this is where it can get a bit more tricky. So the point that is in between B and C. So there are a few ways to do this, okay? There's one way which is a bit inaccurate that I don't particularly like, where you will kind of, so bear with me 1 second. This. Those points. So the answer to the first question is going to be just this coordinate here, point A. Now the midpoint, you can do it by sight, okay, but that can be a bit awkward to do. But if I do it by sight, I can see that this is going to be my midpoint. So the answer to part B, how far long is it? Well, it's 1 across. Now how far up or down it is? Well, it's 0 up or down, right? Because if you look, it's along this origin line here. It's along the axis. There is a mathematical way of doing this, which some of you might prefer. And this equation that isn't always given to you, so you need to be able to remember it yourself. And to work out the midpoint, what you're doing is you're basically taking the average of the two coordinates. So this might look a bit tricky, but I promise you it's not that bad. The coordinates of B, if we have a look, for B it's -1 because it goes -1 there, and -1. Right, 1 to the left and 1 down. If we look here, the points come from here. If we look at C, it's 3 across right, because it lines up with the 3 on the x-axis. And it's 1 up, because it lines up with the 1 on the y-axis. So the way you can work out the coordinates of the midpoint mathematically rather than doing it by eye, which again sometimes can be a bit tricky, is all you need to do is find out the x-coordinate, you add the two x-coordinates of the points together. So -1 plus 3. Okay? And then what you're going to do is half that number, always. So -1 plus 3 gives me 2, right? So -1, 0, 1, 2. And then if I half it, I get 1. So the x-coordinate is going to be 1. And then to work out the y-coordinate, you do the same, but with the y values. So it starts at -1, and this line goes up to 1. So again, all we're doing is we're taking the difference between them. So that will give us the value we want. So in this case, -1 plus 1 is 0 over 2. 0 divided by 2 is 0. So the y-coordinate is 0, which is the same as what we did here. So you can also just add together the x values and divide them by 2, add together the y values and divide them by 2. That'll also give you the exact same answer. Okay? So that's it for the first question. So if we label this question 1. For the next question, we have a straight line BC like this. And it says plot the point with coordinates -2, -3. So again, we're going to do the exact same thing as part 1. So -2 is going to be along the x-axis. So we're going to go to -2, which is here. And then we're going to go on the y-axis where -3 is. Well, y, so it goes 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2, -3 is here. So my coordinate is going to be right here. Okay, if you want to draw out a line, so along -2, so dash dot 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 dot, -3. And where they cross is where your point A is going to be. So that's where that part is. Part B, write down the coordinates of the midpoint BC. Now this is what I'm saying. This is a bit trickier to work out where the midpoint is. Well, I can say it's roughly here, but that's not good enough for your exam. There needs to be a specific answer. So again, let's look at the coordinates of B. So it's -3 for the x-axis because it comes up here. And it's 3 along the y-axis. Okay, -3 and 3. And C is 3 along the x-axis and it's 0 up. So 3, 0. So the x-coordinates, we add the coordinates together. So for B, that's x, that's y. That's x, that's y. We have -3 plus 3. And then we're dividing it by 2. What's -3 plus 3? Well, it's going to be 0 over 2, so the x-coordinate is 0. So I'm going to put this in a little box so we know. For y, well, we have 3 and then 0, so let's do 3 plus 0 over 2. By the way, it doesn't matter which order you add the coordinates in, it'll be the same thing either way. 3 plus 0 is 3 over 2. You can either write this as 1.5 or you can just leave it as 3 over 2. Okay, I'm going to leave it as 3 over 2 just for clarity. So here we're going to have the x-coordinate, which is 0, the y-coordinate, which is 3 over 2. So if we were to answer this, it would be 0 and 3 over 2. Like that. Okay. Give me just a second just to make sure you've written all that down, make sure it's all okay. Perfect. Doesn't look like there's any questions, so let's keep going. Again, these are all exam questions, so this stuff has turned up or showed up before. Midpoints especially, they love asking you about, but plotting coordinates is going to be part of questions as well. So if they say, for example, plot the graph with equation blah blah blah, you need to be able to plot the points, of course, otherwise you're going to get the wrong answer. So plot the point with coordinates -1, 4. So again, look at the x value first. This one's the x value, this one's the y value. If x is -1, let's find -1 along this horizontal line. It's here. Y is 4, so let's draw a little dash where 4 is. Now if we draw a dotted line going this way and a dotted line going this way, they cross right here, and that's where your point A is going to be. Now for part B, write down the coordinates of the midpoint of BC. Well, first of all, we need the coordinates of B and C. The coordinates of B, it's -2 along, and it's 1 up. So -2 here and 1 up. For C, we go +2 along, and we're going 3 up. Okay, now to work out the coordinates of the midpoint, we add the x coordinates together, so -2 + 2, and then divide it by 2. So that gives me 0 over 2. Okay? 0 divided by 2 is 0. Put that in a little box. Okay? Might be a bit confusing if I put the zeros in a box, because now it looks like a shape. But anyways, for y, again we add the coordinates together, so 1 + 3, and then divide by 2. 1 + 3 is 4, divided by 2 is going to give me 2, so the coordinates of the midpoint are 0, 2. Okay, so again, we're not actually covering everything you need to know about graphs in this session. Just keep that in mind. We're just going to be going through a bunch of the kind of more basic questions and move on to the more trickier stuff a bit later. Okay, but this is kind of a good recap for you. You need to make sure you're 100% okay with this. Promise not too many more of these questions. But plot the point with coordinates 3 and -1, and then label this point A. So let's go 3 across is here. -1 will put us down here. So again, let's mark this point, then draw a dotted line going across, dotted line going down. Where they meet is going to be your point A. And it says write down the coordinates of the midpoint of BC. So again, hopefully, I've done this quite a few times so far. In fact, I didn't actually label this question. This is question 3. This is the 4th time we're doing it. So you should be getting the hang of it. If not, please make sure you're asking questions in the chat. So just as a reminder, treat these like you would lessons in school, but also make sure you're asking as many questions as possible, because that's the whole point. The best way to learn is to ask questions. Keep in mind there is a benefit to this over your school classes in the sense that it's basically anonymous, right? So if you ask a question, even if you think it's silly, who cares, right? No one knows who you actually are, so it's completely fine. Just make sure you're making best use of me, okay? So coordinate for B, well, it's along the -3 x line, so let's put -3, and it's 1 up, so let's put the 1 there. So the coordinates of B are -3 and 1. Coordinates for C, well, it's 2 across, so let's put a 2 there, and then put -3 going down. Okay, so the coordinates of the midpoint, yet again, what do? We add the x coordinates. The x coordinates are always the first numbers in these brackets, so -3 + 2, and then divide it by 2. -3 + 2 is -1 over 2. So our answer, again, we leave it in terms of a fraction normally, but if you do it as decimals, normally they don't care. So you are more than welcome to write this as -0.5. I personally prefer fractions just in terms of the look. Especially with some of the fractions, if it's like a longer fraction, it can be a bit ugly. We don't like ugly things. So with y, again, add the y coordinates. The y coordinates are the other numbers or the second one. So 1 plus -3. Don't write -3 because that'd be something different. Over 2. 1 plus -3 is the same as doing 1 minus 3, which is -2 over 2, which is -1. Okay, so our coordinate here is going to be -1/2, comma 1, -1. That's a half. 1. Okay, so if you're struggling with adding and subtracting negative numbers, I promise you it gets easier with practice. So you need to make sure you're practicing. But a good way to kind of look at it is if you have a number line. So 0, okay. So don't worry about thinking that these are childish. There are sixth formers that use number lines for various reasons, and you'll need to use number lines anyway in your GCSE for inequalities. Okay. So you have +1 here, and we're subtracting 3, so we're going 3 to the left. So 1, 2, 3 gives me -2. Okay. Don't be afraid to use number lines. It's better to be right than it is to be kind of proud and not use them and then get it wrong. Here we go, something ever so slightly different. It says write down the coordinates of point A. So if I look at point A, it's this point here in the bottom, towards the bottom right. First off, you need to find its x value. Now can you see that this is the only x value it would line up with? So we can put the 4 right there. And this is the y value it lines up with, it's -2. Okay, and that's essentially all you need to do for that bit. Okay. Part B, on the grid, mark with a cross the point 4, 3, mark it B. Okay, cool. So 4 across brings me to this same line, and 3 up brings me here. So again, let's draw little dotted lines. And this is the point it's asking us for, and it says label it B. Now here's a bit of graph drawing, but it's not that much. But it says on the grid, draw the line with the equation x equals -1. So what that means is all of the possible values where x is equal to -1. Okay, so what I do is I find x equals -1 on this, it's here. Now all of these values, okay, are just going to be a straight line going straight down across it. So let's make it slightly neater. It's going to be like this. Okay, that was not accurate whatsoever, my bad. Right, it seems to veer off to the right a bit. Okay. Close to that. Okay. And that will be our line. The reason for this is along this entire line, the x coordinate is -1. Okay, so if I asked you what the coordinate of this point is here, you would say go across, it'd be -1, and go up, it'd be 5. If I asked you what the coordinate of this point here is along the line, you'd say -1, 2. If I asked you what the coordinate of this point is, it's -1, -4. It's all the same, which means it all has the equation x equals to -1. Okay. Give me a second just to copy that down. Okay, it doesn't look like there are any questions about that. Perfect. Okay, so here we have another similar question, not the same though. First part is write down the coordinates of point A. So if we look at point A here, again let's mark where it is on the x value, and that is a 5. Mark where it is on the y, and it's -2. Also, just so you know, I am well aware that this might be a bit of a boring topic. Unfortunately, some of the topics in maths can be a bit boring, but again, if we get through them, we can make sure that they make sense. So again, for point A, it's saying, what are the coordinates? So what I do is I match where it says on the x-axis, and can you see that it would only line up with the 5 here? And I'd write the 5 in this box. So the first number is always the x value, the second number is the y value. Then I mark where it says on the y-axis, and that's where it says -2. So you'd put the -2 there, okay? Now we have to do the reverse. So on the grid, mark with the cross the point -1, 3. So the way we do this is we look up where -1 is, which is here along the x-axis. Then look where 3 is along the y-axis, which is up here. Okay? So then all we do is draw a dotted line going up from the -1 and across from the 3, and where they meet, we draw our x and we label that with a point B. Okay? So that should be all okay. For part C, it then says on the grid, draw the line with the equation y equals 6. So in our previous question here, it said to draw the the line with the equation x equals -1. So what we did is we found where x equals -1 is, and then drew a straight line going up. So in this case, it's y. So let's find where y equals 6. That's along here. Okay. And now we just need to draw a line where all of the points will equal y equals 6. Okay. So if I look at this point over here, the coordinates would be 3, 6. If I look over here, the coordinates are 7, 6. Again, remember how I'm getting this. Read the x value first, so that's where the 3 is, and that's in line with this point, and then 6 with the y-axis, same here. So if you notice, all of the points along this line here all have y equals 6. So now what we need to do is draw a straight-ish line going through these points. I said straight-ish, so don't judge me too hard. But yeah, that would be what y equals 6 would look like. Just a flat horizontal line going across. Okay. So does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, it doesn't look like it. That's perfectly fine. Let's go down. So this question is exactly like the 2 questions previously. So if we go back 2 questions, that's going to be the exact same thing. So let's see how much you've retained. So once again, it starts off with write down the coordinates of point A. And again, this is an exam question, so this is exactly what can show up and probably will show up because coordinates are really, really important. So again, this is my point A. I look where it matches on the x-axis, and I can see that that's along here. I look where this matches on the y-axis, it's here. So I write the x number first, so that's 2. Write the y number second, that's 6. That's all you have to do. Part B, on the grid mark with across the point 5, -1. So again, let's look where 5 is on the x-axis, it's here. -1, if I find it, is here. Now draw dotted lines going across and down from this 5. Where they meet is going to be where your coordinate is, and that's going to be point B. Okay? So, those will be the coordinates of point B. And the last step, it says on the grid, draw the line with the equation x equals 3. Okay, so again, this is probably the trickier part. So what you're going to do first? Well, just like in the previous 2 questions, what we do is we find where x, because it's asking us about x, equals 3. So that is right here. Okay? Now, just so I explained it before, what we want to do here is we want to, if I look at all of these points up here, so if I asked you what the coordinates of this point here was, hopefully you would say that you would read along, and that would be 5. So you'd write a 5 here. And you go all the way up, and that would be a 7. And then if I asked you, what about this point over here? Well, then you'd say that it's 5 across and 4. Right? So all along this line, x is equal to 5. So if now I look over here, I can do the same thing. So if I look at those 2 points, 3 across and 7 up would give me the coordinates 3, 7. 3 across and 4 up would give me 4. So in other words, if I were to draw a line going straight down, so let's make it a solid line going straight down, all the way through all of the graph, every single point along this line will have an x value of +3, which is exactly what this question is asking me to do. Find a line, so draw the line, where x is equal to 3. Okay? So a few more people just joined, so does that make sense to everyone? If you have any questions, just make sure you just use the chat. If not, I'll leave that up there for, let's say, 10 seconds, and we'll see if that's all okay. Makes sense? Perfect. Okay, cool. So again, this stuff is somewhat basic, so it's okay if you're finding it a bit easy, but these are kind of the fundamentals we need to make sure we go through. So let's go this part. So again, today, for those of you that just joined, we're covering coordinates and we're doing pictograms. So I'll just briefly go over one of the earlier questions just so you, for those of you that just come in, can get a bit of a leg up on it. So one style of question which is likely to appear in your exam, so these are all exam questions by the way, is they may ask you to plot points. Okay, so to plot points, all you need to do is notice that the first number in the bracket is the x value, second number is the y value. Okay, so what you'd do in this case is plot the point with coordinates 3 minus 1, is you'd find 3 along the x-axis, which is over here, and then you'd find the minus 1 along the y-axis, which is here, draw a dotted line going across and down, and that's where A is. Are there any questions about that? I think that's all okay. Cool. So hopefully you might remember that from the previous years. And then to find the midpoint, this is something that's a bit more interesting. They don't tend to give you the equation in your exam. Okay? So all you want to do is add the x values together. So that's what I've done over here. Is I've added the x coordinates, right? Minus 3 and 2. And then divided them by 2. Did the same for the y values. Okay? Does anyone have any questions about that? So I know a few of you just joined. I just want to go over that for those that have just joined. Cool. Perfect. So now if we move swiftly on to pictograms, this is just a type of data representation that they can ask you about in your exam. So essentially they use tally charts and they also use pictograms. You need to be able to draw pictograms and you also need to be able to read them. Okay? So first off, if we start with the tally chart. Okay, so with tally charts, they give you these little ticks. Count up the ticks, that gives you how many are in here. Okay, so in this case, the tally chart shows information about the number of ice cream sold by a shop last week. Okay, so on Monday there were 11 sold, Tuesday there were 13 sold, Wednesday there were 9 sold, Thursday 11, Friday 9 again. Okay. One thing I want to go on just for those that have just joined, so welcome first of all. You should really make use of the kind of chat. Just make sure you ask any questions you have. I know that it can be a bit embarrassing to ask questions in school. So now that you have basically an anonymous service, you can just ask me any questions you want. And just, ask whatever you need, okay? And for this one, it says write down one thing that is wrong with the tally chart. Okay? So all I'd do is I'd look through, okay, so first of all, a frequency column, that's fine, that's okay. There's a tally column and then there's that column. All good so far. So maybe they've made a mistake in counting. Okay? Well, let's have a look. This represents 5, that represents 5, that represents 1. 5 add 5 add 1 is 11, so that's correct. The next one, we have 5, 10, 12. This is incorrect. Okay, that's all you have to do for these kinds of questions. So you just say, what's wrong? The frequency for Tuesday should be 12 instead of 13. That's it, 1 mark. Okay, so whenever they ask, so they like to ask this question in exams, write down one thing that's wrong with whatever. The best way to answer it is just kind of look at what the common things are. So does it have everything it needs? A tally, frequency, and these categories? If yes, count the tallies and that'll be your mistake. Okay. Next, so these are 2 parts, so part A, part B. The pictogram gives information about the number of chocolate bars sold by a shop last week. Okay, and they give us these various circles, and it tells me that 1 full circle represents 3 chocolate bars. Okay, they always give a key, or you'll need to work out what the key is. Okay, so let's just talk about what this means. So this means that each one of these shapes that we have here represents 3. So 3, 3, and 3. Okay? So in total there would be 9 chocolate bars here. Okay? Again, this key means that this full shape here represents 3. So this would also be 3, 3, 3, 3, which would make 12. And then so on, right? We can keep going. Okay, again, stop me if you have any questions whatsoever. You can't say half a chocolate bar. Yeah, good point. So this is where it's a bit more interesting. So the next point is it says 3, 3, 3, and as you rightly said, this would represent half of 3, which is 1.5. And so you're wondering, okay, how do they sell half a chocolate bar? Well, there are a few ways that I can think of, but let me just preface something. In your exam, they can ask you to do stuff that doesn't always make 100% sense. Okay? So this represents 1.5 because the pictogram says so. Okay? If you want my opinion, let's think of what it could be. It could just be that they were on sale, or only half was sold for some reason. Maybe the shopkeeper broke it in half, whatever. Doesn't really matter in the context of this, but you are 100% right. It's kind of weird that they put half a chocolate bar. But it's what the pictogram says, so let's do that. For part B, write down one thing that is wrong with the tally chart. Well, actually you make a very good point. Does it make sense that you can sell half a chocolate bar? Not really. So we can always write that as our reasoning, okay? So Thursday has half a chocolate bar being sold. Right, so that could be a reason why it's wrong, because like you said, it doesn't make complete sense. But let's check if anything else is wrong, because technically it could be right. Maybe they did sell half. Is there anything else that's wrong with this? Well, it has my categories here. Those look okay. And they've drawn this. It looks correct to be drawn. I don't have any data to represent it, so I don't know if the data is correct, but that's okay. The only thing that I can think of that looks a bit weird, just like Biscuit said, is that there's half of a chocolate bar being sold. So that's the only thing I can think of, which in this case happens to be correct. Okay? Does that make sense for the thought process? Okay? So if you spot something that's weird, note it down. If nothing else is obviously wrong, then that would be your answer. Is that all okay? Okay. Perfect. So it looks like that was okay. Missing Saturday and Sunday, yeah. So you could say that in a week, Saturday and Sunday are missing. Normally when they refer to a week, they mean like a working week, which is Monday to Friday. I know that might be a bit weird, but that's something else that you can mention. So with questions like this, you'll find that mark schemes tend to have a few answers. So yeah, missing Saturday and Sunday might be one that you can write. But the half a chocolate bar I think is a bit weirder, in my opinion. Okay, so let's go to the next part. Now this is the correct version of the previous one. If you notice, it's the exact same situation. So ice cream sold by a shop last week. First thing we need to do is fill in the tally chart. So complete the tally chart for 2 marks. Okay. So first things first, we need to count up tallies. So when you do a tally, it would represent 1, 2, 3, 4. You just count the number of lines. Then when you have a 5, you put a line diagonally. So that's 5 lines, but it's easier to see when you put a line through it. So you can just count up in 5s. So this Tuesday would be 5, and then another 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 in total. 5 plus 4. Okay. This one has 2 of these kinds of sections. So that's 2 5s, which would just be 10. This one, so 5 and then 7 to make 7. Now this next one we have to actually write backwards. There are a few ways you can do this. One way is to count how many 5s would be in there, so you know how many of the kind of diagonals you need to draw. Or you can just do it from scratch. You're going up to 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So one question that you might have, I can anticipate you asking, is do we have to draw the diagonals? The answer is yes. You can't just draw 11 lines. So going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's incorrect. Okay, you have to draw the diagonals as part of a tally chart. Okay, otherwise they become very hard to read when you get bigger numbers. Okay, now the next part is it says we need to represent this on a pictogram. And if you look, the key's changed. The key is now 2 ice creams, which makes a bit more sense. We won't get half an ice cream. Okay, the first one's been done for us, so as you can see, the whole circles make 2. So 2, 4, 6, that looks correct to me. Okay, now when we have 9, how many whole circles are we going to have? Well, we're going to have, how many 2's go into 9 without a remainder? The answer is 4, remainder 1. So we're going to draw 4 full circles. 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then if we draw the little line in the middle, again, excuse my horrific circles. And then they also have 4 dots in the corners, right? 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So that makes 8. And the last one is going to be half of this diagram. Okay? So let's just draw like basically a backwards D. That would represent 9. Okay? Are there any questions about that at all? That's okay. Wonderful. So, just so you're aware, if you're unsure of how to draw half of the diagram, they're usually pretty obvious, but I have seen things like stickmen being used. And then to draw half of it, you have to kind of do something like this. Okay? They're not expecting you to be an artist. Okay? So don't worry about making it all nice and neat. As long as it looks fairly obvious it's half, you're totally fine. You don't need to make sure it's absolutely perfect. For Wednesday, we have 10. So how many 2's go into 10? That's 5. So I'm going to draw 5 circles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then draw the line in the middle, line in the middle, line to the middle, and then draw the dots at 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect. And then Thursday, so I'm going to start speeding up because I think this is relatively okay for you guys. Again, just make sure you use the chat if you are stuck at all. Again, there are no silly questions, but also no one else knows who you are here, so it really doesn't matter what you ask. Happy for that. Friday, how many 2's go into 11? That's 5, remainder 1, so we're going to draw 5 circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then half of a circle. And again, we're going to do these lines, and then we have to draw the dots too. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, getting a bit messy as I'm getting a bit lazy. Yeah, the little dots were kind of hard to see, but since they included it on the first one, actually, is the question big enough? I can make it bigger if you guys need it to be. But they are a bit faint. Make it ever so slightly bigger. Yeah, it's a bit tricky. Again, if you had the paper in front of you, it would be a bit bigger than this, so you would be able to see the dots. But normally they keep it kind of nice. Sometimes they use squares too. Also the small laptop screen as well. But yeah, in real life it's going to be A4, so a bit bigger, nice and chunky for you. Hopefully that's all okay. So I don't think pictograms are too tricky. Not too tricky. But if you have any questions, now's the best time to ask. Okay. Ah, perfect. So, this is probably as hard as pictograms get. Okay, so, perfect, you should be able to see that. We need to complete the diagram, and we don't have a key. Okay, so, at the moment, I have no idea what we can do. Okay, so it says, if we read this out, a total of 48 wheels were sold on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Actually, let's read the question. So, it shows information about the number of wheels sold by a shop on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Okay, so 48 wheels were sold on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. That's a total. So, Monday plus Tuesday plus Wednesday is 48. I'm just going to use letters to represent the days of the week, just to save my hands. 18 wheels were sold on Thursday, so TH is equal to 18. And lastly, 22 were sold on Friday. Okay, use this information to complete the pictogram. So, this might seem a bit tricky, but we can use this first piece of information to work out the key. Because without the key, we have no idea what we're doing. I don't know how many circles, half circles, quarter circles I'm doing. Okay, just so you're aware, it might not be the case that this equals 4 and this equals 1. Okay, so we can't assume, we have to work it out. So how do we work it out? Well, they tell me that in total over Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, it's 48. So how many circles have they used to represent 48? We have 1 circle, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a half, and then we have 2 quarters. So can you see that the 2 quarters and a half would make a 6th circle? Does that make sense? So if I add the quarter on, so if I add the little quarter here and another quarter here, it makes a whole circle. That's where I got the 6 from. Okay? So in other words, 48 divided by 6 will give me how much 1 circle represents. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm just going to give you a second to digest that information. Make sure you're all 100% okay with that. Okay. Then hopefully from your multiples you know that this is equal to 8 wheels. Okay? Everyone okay with that? Certainly seems like it. Good. Perfect. So in other words, we now know how much 1 circle is worth. So if we look at the key for the previous question, we have to draw the circle. So let's draw the circle. It also has 4 dots. Yes. Does that make sense? So what I did is, in total, can you see that there are 6 full circles that they've used to represent 48? Right, so they're saying that on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, so all of these together, there should be 48 wheels. Yeah. If you're wondering why it's wheels, that's just from that. Ah, good. So all we did is we did... No, don't be sorry. Like I said, there's no silly questions at all, okay? It's tricky to work out. This is the hardest pictograms get. So if that's your only question, then really well done so far. Okay, and then all we would need to do is write represents 8 wheels. Fantastic. Okay. So all we need to do now is draw the circles for Thursday and Friday. So this is where it gets a bit more interesting. How many 8s go into 18? Right, so 18, we're going to have 2 8s. Right, so 2 full wheels, like that. What's left over is a remainder of 2, which is going to be represented by not half a wheel, a quarter of one. That might be tricky. Does everyone get that? So these 2 circles, they represent 8 each. So far I have 16, but I need to get to 18. Now if a full wheel represents 8, and I want to get to 2, right? So if I'm saying that 1 wheel equals 8, and I want to get to 2, I need to divide it. So to get from here to here, I divide by 4. So I need to split my circle into 4. Okay, so I'm going to draw a... because 2.25, well done. That's a ugly quarter of a circle, but I hope that makes sense. Okay. So that's it for Thursday. I'll give you just, let's say, 10 seconds to ask any questions you might have about that. Again, just make sure it makes 100% sense. Can be tricky, Okay, it sounds like everyone is 100% fine, which I'm glad. So, next is 22 wheels are sold on Friday. So I can do 8, 16, another 8 would bring me to 24. So I can't draw another full circle. Okay? So I can get up to 16. So if I do 22, what's the remainder? 22 minus 16 would give me 6. So I need to draw 6 wheels. So if a quarter of a wheel represents 2, then to get 6 wheels, that's going to be 3/4 of a circle. I went very quick there. So a quarter of a circle equals 2. So if I want to get to 6, I need to multiply by 3. So that'd be 3/4 of a circle would give me 6. So again, that was tricky. So I'm going to say a few seconds. Anyone can't see why? Makes sense. Okay. So again, there are a few of you that aren't using the chat. Yeah? It's okay. Don't be shy or anything. There's no need. So we need to draw 3/4 of a circle. So that's going to look like... you might be able to draw better than me, but it should look something like that. And let's add the little dots for these 4 bits. Okay, that's it. That's the complete pictogram. But keep in mind, the complete part includes the key. Okay, so you actually need to write in the box what the key is. It's okay to work it out, but you need to put it in the box. And that's 3 marks. In terms of the marks, what you get a mark for, you get a mark for doing the correct key, a mark for a correct Thursday, a mark for a correct Friday. So in my opinion, that's quite low in terms of numbers of marks. But that's what you get. Any questions about that? Should be okay. So, just so you're aware, for those of you that are just joining for the first time, I will upload these as a PDF. So with the answers on it and everything, just so you have these as notes, okay? But if you want to add any more notes of yourself, then make sure you're writing them on paper now, and then add them on once you download the new notes. Okay, next one. So the pictogram shows information about the number of books sold by an author in January, February, and March. And it says that each full square, so a square that's made up of 4 squares, represents 8 books. Okay, so if I just go through this, this represents 8. That's 8. That's half of it, so that would only represent 4. This represents 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8. That's a quarter of it, so a quarter of 8 is 2. Are there any questions where I got those numbers from? Just a few seconds and then I'll move on. Perfect. So write down the number of books sold in March. So if we go to March, that's this column or this section here. So we have 8 books plus another 8 books plus another 8 books plus 2 books. 8 and 8 gives me 16, 8 and 2 is 10. Add those together gives me 26 books. Nice and easy. 14 books were sold in April. Show this information on a pictogram. Okay, so 14 sold in total. How many 8s go into 14 without going over it? That's 1, so we can draw 1 full square. How many do we have left over? Well, we'll have 6 left over, which would be represented by 3/4 of that. So again, if 1 full square equals 8, then if I want to get to 6, it's 3/4 of it. Okay, you divide by 4 and times by 3. Okay, just before, so we're going to finish in about 10 minutes. So just before that, for those of you that's still left, feel free to suggest future topics or any improvements that you want, okay? So so this is a free tuition lesson, but act as if you're paying for it, okay? So if you're happy with this, if you're paying for it, great. But if you have any suggestions, make sure you let me know, okay? Behave as if you're paying for it, which means you should expect high quality. Okay, so if there's anything I can do differently, if there's any other topics you want to go through, you need to let me know, okay? But pretend you're paying for it, okay? Make sure you're getting your money's worth. So the way to do that is A, make sure you suggest changes. So if I can do anything better or any questions I can do or any topics. And B, make sure you're using the chat to ask questions, okay? And for the last bit, it says, what was the total number of books sold in these 4 months? Well, 14 was sold in April. In March, we worked out that it was 26. February, we have 8, 16, 24. January, 8, 16 plus 4 is 20. So we just need to add those 4 numbers together. So if we go down here, we just have 20, 24, 26, 14. So let's scroll down. I haven't actually drawn that very neatly. Let's do this a bit neater. Okay. 4 plus 6 is 10, plus 4 is 14. So I put the 4 here. I can't fit 14, so I'm going to put a 1 up here. 2 add 2 is 4, plus 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7, plus 1 is 8. 84 books in total. Okay. So again, this is like the average pictogram question. Okay. Well, good. Perfect. Again, we have the pictogram shows information about the number of pizzas sold by a shop on Monday and Tuesday. Just so you're aware, this was a question on the higher paper and foundation paper 3 years ago. Okay, so this is 100% the style of question that they can give you, okay? And on Monday and Tuesday, cool. And it says that one circle represents 8 pizzas. So, again, this is just a question from a few years ago. Write down the number of pizzas sold on Monday. So we have one full one, which represents 8. So if a full one represents 8, then half of 1 should represent 4. Cool? So 8 plus 4 gives me 12. Fairly easy, okay? You'll notice that the first part's a bit easy, work your way in, but the next part, you can already see there's a few sentences, looks a bit more complicated. On Tuesday, we have 8, 8, and 4. 8 to 8 is 16. Plus 4 gives me 20. Fantastic. Now here is the interesting bit. This is a 3-mark question. So on Wednesday and Thursday, a total of 24. So if I do W plus T, Wednesday plus Thursday is 24. The number of pizzas sold on Thursday was 3 times the number of pizzas sold on Wednesday. So what they're telling me is that Thursday is equal to 3 times Wednesday. So that's 3W. Is that okay so far? So I've used this first piece of information over here. This second bit of information I've used here. Any questions about that? Good. Okay. So now if I put this straight back into this equation, T is equal to 3W, so I have W plus 3W equals 24. So 4W is 24. Divide by 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6. That's one way to do it. Does anyone want me to show them a different way, not using algebra? So that's one way to work out how many pizzas were sold on Wednesday. Okay. The other way is to use ratios. Okay. So the ratio of Thursday to Wednesday is 3 to 1 because it's 3 times on Thursday than it is on Wednesday. So all you do there is change it into a fraction. So for Wednesday, it would equal 1, because you take the 1 from Wednesday, over the total, which is 3 plus 1, which is 4, and you times it by the total number of pizzas. A quarter of 24 is 6. Same way, same thing. So you have 2 different ways. I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to ask any questions about those 2 methods. Perfect. Now for both methods, Thursday had 3 times as many pizzas. So 3 times 6 is 18. And here the same thing, 3 times 6 is 18. So how can we check if we're on the right track? Well, if a total of 24 pizzas were sold, right? That means Wednesday plus Thursday should be 24. 6 at 18 is indeed 24. All good. So Wednesday was 6, Thursday was 18. So to represent 8 pizzas, we're going to do to represent 6 pizzas using the circles, we're going to do 3/4 of a circle. Ooh, that's hideous. Okay. The reason for that is 6 is 3/4 of 8. Okay. Again, for those of you that have any questions, please don't be embarrassed to just type something in the chat. Okay. Pretend you're paying for this lesson. Okay. You want to make sure you're getting your money's worth. So message any questions that you may have. Okay. So for Thursday, we're doing 18. So how many 8s go into 18? That's 2. So we can draw 2 full circles right now. Now we're left over with 2 pizzas. Now 2 is 1/4 of 8. So all I need to do is draw 1/4 of a circle. And then add in the little dots. That's it. Okay. So again, this is as tricky as pictograms get. So not the last question. This question here and this question are as hard as it gets. Okay, so it's a bit of problem solving, a bit of applying that logic and brain power that you have. Okay, so that's actually really good timing. That's all the questions we have for today, and we're about 4 minutes early, so a bit of a shame. Next time I'll add a few more questions. But just as a recap of today, we went through pictograms, okay? And hopefully that's all okay. Just stop me if anything doesn't make sense. So we went through pictograms and drawing keys and kind of interpreting it all. We also went through coordinates. So does anyone have any questions about coordinates at all? Okay, so what I want to ask you guys is, I already have a spec that we're going to go through, so I know when we're going to do each topic, but does anyone have any topics that they'd like to go through or any suggestions for next week? So do you want more exam questions? Do you want different explanations or what? If there's nothing, then you are more than welcome to leave. Again, keep in mind that these classes start at 6 p.m, okay? So a few of you joined at past or 20 past. If you can get here for the beginning, I start the stream about 5 minutes early. Okay, so just try and get here at 6 p.m. so you get the full kind of benefit of it. Does anyone have any questions? If not, then I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and again, make sure you message any suggestions that you have or leave them in the comments, whatever you want to do. But other than that, I thank you all for joining in and taking part. So prime factors. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll note that down. I'll see where that's coming up. But yeah, just so you know, these start at 6 p.m. So for those of you that joined a bit late, just make sure you join at 6. Just so you can get the full lesson. But again, I really want you guys to treat this as if you're paying me, okay? So if you have, demand something of me, demand some quality. So if I'm not answering questions properly, ask questions, say, why is it this? Challenge me on things, okay? Or if you want certain topics, make sure you let me know, okay? But other than that, you guys are more than welcome to leave, and I'll stop the stream soon. So I just want to thank you again for joining in. Year 11 stuff? Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a spread of questions. Okay? So some of the questions will be kind of year 11 tier. So these pictogram questions towards the end were year 11 questions. They're from the GCSE paper. Okay? So this kind of... Which question was it? Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. But yeah, no worries. Yeah, you guys are more than welcome to leave if you're okay. But if you have any questions or any suggestions, then please let me know. But yeah, year 11 stuff. I'll write that I'm going to include more year 11 stuff. Okay. So stuff from your actual exam papers. All of these are exam questions, so It's all okay. Okay, so that'll be the end of the stream. So I hope you guys all have a good evening, and just remember 6 p.m. try and be on time if you want to, and demand some stuff of me. Other than that, I thank you guys for coming out. Trick 2? Okay.